So I'm looking at defining metrics and looking at why we should track them. I suppose what I really like to do is take things back to the basics. So I know a lot of the time with data and with analytics, we like to go in at a really high level right from the start. We feel like we should be tracking things, but we don't really know what they do. So I'm going to wind it back to a very simplistic level. I mean, you'll see the first slide when I'm looking at defining metrics. You won't believe how simple it is. I don't think you would have expected to see a slide that basic today. And basically, as I said, I'm pretty new at this game company, and I got quite excited with all the kind of media and copy I get. So I get quite excited with all the characters, but then I forget about them about halfway through. But there we go. So something really basic. So I'm going to go through different statistics, different metrics that we like to track. And cost per hire always comes up, right? It's really basic thing we all talk about. What's your cost per hire? And I even put a really simplistic diagram up there, because obviously none of you knew what cost per hire was, right? But actually what I find quite interesting is a lot of the time when we look at cost per hire, we don't actually look at our total recruitment costs. There are so many excuses like, well, the cost of myself and my team, they're not recruitment costs, and things like that. And in my opinion, everything to do with recruitment is a recruitment cost, and that's your cost per hire. For me, when I use it, when I go into a new business, it's more to benchmark against previous data. I wouldn't so much use it to, I wouldn't go into a new business and go, I wouldn't have a target for cost per hire. It's more to benchmark against previous data. You can look as well, a lot of people like to look at kind of what's an average agency fee, how much do I cost, But I think that being cheaper than an agency is like the absolute bare minimum we should be doing. Of course, we should be cheaper than agencies. I mean, that's just a given. It can be quite hard to actually set a limit. What is a good cost per hire? What is bad? I think a lot of you will find when an in-house recruiter comes into a new business. So this has happened with me a couple of times. You reduce the cost massively, and then they nosedive, and then the next year they come back up, and you kind of got the business leader saying, why are your costs increased? What's going on? And a lot of the time you can kind of, I think if you're doing a really good job, actually a lot of it is investing back into the tools and the systems that we have to do a better job. Also, as well, it can be on the number of hires. So this kind of brings that into account. If one year you hire 100 and the next year you hire 1,000, of course the costs are going to be different. Right, so this one I think is super important for some businesses and maybe not as important for others. And some people measure it in different ways. Obviously, we like to measure it as soon as an offer's been accepted. Cool, right, move on next. Because that's what we can control, right? But a lot of businesses need to look at when the person actually starts. And a lot of you are probably doing executive roles as well. They can be like 3 months, 6 month notice period. And it's a bit harsh if we get penalized for that. So I like to kind of look at the two. But some businesses, I don't know if any of you work for kind of large consultancies, but like the whole bread and butter is having people out with clients and being billed. And that's where these companies make their money. So that's something we should then target on. We should maybe be a little bit less conscious of all the costs, and we have to be upfront with that with the business, and look at how much money we lose if someone's not in place. Sometimes it means having to swallow our pride. I know it's really hard. Like we want to do everything direct. I get that. And I had that when I started this role, and the business, basically the CEO said, right, our client are paying all the costs, but if we don't have people in place within the next couple of weeks, this project's going to fail, and it's a multi-million-pound project. So me going, I want to save 20K in agency fees, it's really not a big deal. So it's just trying to balance those costs and looking at how much money the business loses compared to us being a little bit stingy. This one's really important to me as well, sourcing channel. For me, this is the main use of your ATS. I know loads of people are going to really disagree. I think sometimes people think ATSs are like a applicant finding system or alchemy system, when they get a bit upset that their ATS doesn't magically find people, and that's our job. Our job's to find, that's what we're there for. Otherwise, if this magical system could do everything, we wouldn't be needed. But I think an amazing thing that you can do with your ATS is track the source of everything, that every candidate, where are they coming from? And if they're from your own network, then put them through your ATS. And it gives you all this lovely data. You can look at the ROI of all of your tools. Like we're always getting told, people, oh, you're not using this tool, then you're not very good at what you're doing. But I've heard that so many times. Like one of them was Google AdWords and stuff like this. And I was thinking, well, I've actually tried out a lot of these things, and I've had no return on investment. And obviously things take time, but if they don't work for your business, they don't work. And it's just a good way to be able to justify our costs, and again, look at kind of how much you're spending on agencies. Are you spending enough on your own tools? Because I don't think it's really fair if we're told we can't spend money on tools to be better at our job, but then we have to go to agencies that, guess what, they've got amazing tools, because that's their bread and butter, and I think a lot of the time they shoot us out of the water that way. It's for being better prepared. I loved how overly convoluted that formula is for something that is so simple that I had to share it to make myself feel a bit smarter. And then this morning I read through it and I couldn't remember what it meant. So I had to look it up again. I think retention is really important for us to look at, but it's not completely our fault. If retention is poor, that could be down to a number of things. But we should also look at it because maybe we're not finding the right people. So basically looking at that diagram, it's really simple. R is retention, S are the number of people that have separated from your business, B is the number of people at the beginning of a time period, E is at the end, and then you divide that for your average. So it's basically just how many people have left the business, what was the average number in a time period. It's really straightforward. But I think, again, that's really important for us to look at, are we bringing in the right people to the business? Can we help reduce turnover? Are we being realistic when we're talking to candidates about our business? And can we highlight problems and talk with the wider business and try and find out why turnover is so high? Obviously, it can be different for different types of businesses. Like a lot of sort of digital media, the turnover tends to be a lot higher than with other sectors. This one came up a lot when I was looking at kind of what metrics people like to measure. I honestly don't really understand why it matters. I don't really get it, like who kind of cares? But a lot of people like to measure it. I think it's really circumstantial, right? If you win a new project, have a new project and you need to hire 100 people, who cares how many people you hired last June? But whatever. I think a lot of this interface is, they'll give you kind of an overview, which is kind of exciting, ooh, interesting. What's interesting here is it says 2K average days open. Am I misreading that? That just seems ridiculous. Surely people haven't got roles for tens of years, right? I don't know. Anyway, this one I think is really important to track, and it's very easy, just looking at the number of offers you've put out and the number that were accepted, because I think a lot of that can be looking at your team, and are they actually good at making realistic offers and actually being realistic from the start of the process of your business. If offers aren't being accepted, is it down to your team, or is it down to your business not looking at your competition? How many times have we been that all competitors are paying a lot more money or offering way better benefits, but we're kind of being asked why offers aren't being accepted? But with this kind of data, you can go to your business leaders and say, look, 50% of our offers are being turned down. This is why, and this is what we need to do about it. Again, offer acceptance. I'd always want to sit down with team and looking at our realistic expectations set at the start. When you're speaking to a candidate, if they want their expectations are way above what you can offer, but it'd be amazing the amount of time people go through the whole process to find out after they've had like 10 interviews. And you're like, well, why couldn't that be identified earlier? Looking at, again, it's basically the same as the last point. Are your offers competitive? And tracking the reasons for rejection. That can be a little bit more ad hoc. Maybe you have a survey monkey to people that haven't, why haven't they accepted the offer, and get a reason. And most of the time it'll probably come back as salary, but is there anything you can do about that? Employer lifetime value, I'd love someone to talk me through this because I don't get it. And I've looked through a lot of descriptions. I think it's a really interesting idea, thinking kind of like, how much revenue do your employees bring in? How much have you invested in them? What was the net contribution? I like it, but I'm still kind of figuring it out myself. But it seems to be something that people are waking up to. If anyone knows more about it, I'd love to hear about it, because I think that's a really interesting stat, which I will come back to later. And the last thing is satisfaction. So many people kind of take satisfaction from people that have joined the business. They go, oh, how was the recruitment process? And they're like, oh, it's amazing. I got a new job. It was the best. But they're the last people to ask. I think the most important people are the candidates that didn't get a job or didn't get an offer. And a lot of that could be a bit of salt, I suppose, but some of it is really valid. Like, I was left for a month with no feedback, or there wasn't enough communication, or in my interview I was left waiting around, or I wasn't given a fair chance. And obviously hiring manager satisfaction as well. It's really important to measure for your team. Again, you can set up free surveys, send them to all your hiring managers. And if you're getting feedback, a lot of it seems to always come back, I want more candidates and I want them quicker. And it's kind of like, well, that's not always easy, but maybe you have something like the communication's not good enough. Or I don't feel there's enough understanding of what I do. I think that's really important to kind of get that feedback. So next bit, I want to look at quality of hire. Again, this one's like a really big debate. It kind of seems to be pretty split. You either think you can measure the quality of hire or you can't. I'm kind of on the fence, but I think every role that you have, it's there for a reason. So there should be some way of measuring what it does. So yeah, it's looking kind of how do you measure quality? For some roles, it's very difficult. For some, it's easy, like with sales, right? It's pretty straightforward. But with other roles, it's very difficult. Maybe more soft skills. Maybe like office management, for example, where someone is doing a lot of things in the background and everything just works. And it's kind of very hard to measure what's happening there. But just to give an example, lifetime employer value coefficient that some people look at, which is really interesting, works really well with sales. So you basically take your average revenue that salespeople have done over the years, so looking at historic data, look at the new hire revenue that's been from a candidate. So I've used a previous company, salespeople were targeted 300K a year. So if a new one came in 375K, they're 1.25 up on what they were targeted. And then it's an easy way just to look at kind of all your team's performance and kind of how they're lining up. The only thing is, obviously, if the historical data is really bad and you've got a track record of really poor sales, then you're really comparing against a really poor track record, so it's difficult. I've also used a customer service example as well. So looking at the number of queries that were dealt with, again, I mean, that's a measure. Everything should have an output. It's just, so that can be a way of measuring these things. So next, I wanted to look at business relevance. Actually, I'm going to take a drink before that. My mouth's completely dry. Okay, I wanted to look at business relevance. So I think sometimes there's a little bit of discord between what we're told to do by our own department and what the business actually wants. I think that's quite a lot. Especially in larger companies, I've had that in the past where kind of it'll be filtered down, you know, cost, save cost, save cost, save cost, but actually that's not really very helpful for the business. That's actually a project management triangle, but it's the same. We've seen that lots of times. And I think it really comes down to what the business needs. Again, coming back to this example of a consultancy that bills people to clients and that's how they make their money, then having to wait 6 weeks, 2 months, 3 months for a hire for the sake of a 5, 6, 7, 8K fee, it just makes no sense. But it happens a lot because we're being told a lot of the time, you cannot use agencies or you cannot use this tool, you cannot have a team size that meets the needs of the business. So yeah, we have to look at kind of the importance of our employees in each discipline and what will happen if they're not in place. So if this tech team isn't in place, this product is not delivered, and then we do not make X money. So it's really, really important to sit down and look at what the business leaders want and what we're told so that our targets are really realistic. And yeah, we have to work really closely, I think, across with talent and HR and the business, and really sit down and look at what is needed. And a lot of that we can use data to kind of back up why offers aren't being accepted, why it takes so long to hire. And yeah, I think we really need to sometimes be a little bit more switched on. Not all of us, but I think I've found anyway in the past to be a little bit more in sync with what the business wants. This is an example I like to use, and it's actually kind of based off, I think, a little bit of kind of situation I've been in as well. Where I was not allowed to use agencies under any circumstance. You cannot use recruitment agencies, no way. And this is basically looking at two small companies, they've made 50 hires in a year, so they've really grown. One company A, Company B. Company A have spent 400K in agencies, and Company B have an in-house team and they spent 100K. So to me, that's like one in-house and a more junior recruiter, and then some money on tools. So at the top line, you go to the business, and if you're Company B, you say, hey, I saved you 300K on fees. And they're going to think, oh, that's great. Well done, you saved 300K, which on the surface of things sounds awesome. But then if you look, it's all down to the people that have been brought in. So if Company A are bringing in people that are much stronger, for want of a better word, or bringing more success to the team, it can really change a lot of things. For example, with sales, maybe Company A, these people they're bringing in are smashing targets by 25%. In Company B, they're actually falling really short, so not hitting the targets that they want. And then if you look to kind of the impacts that can have, the amount of new business brought in by both companies, going back to my example earlier with a 300K target, there's a 1.5 million difference, completely hypothetical, for the sake of a 300K saving. So that's a really extreme example, but I think that's actually quite relevant. I think sometimes we kind of cut our nose to spite our face. It is really hard to kind of suck that up, and that's not always, I'm not advocating let's use 100% agencies. I just think that was something I'd learned because I'd always been about 100% in-house, no matter what the costs were, no matter how long it took. Yeah, I will find you this person, but it's not my specialism, so it'll take me 4 months, but I will do it. And I think sometimes that could be maybe not outsourcing, maybe it's training, maybe it's hiring a specialist or having a freelancer come into your team that's like, yep, I've hired in this field, I know what I'm doing. But maybe thinking outside the box a little bit and the knock-on effect if we don't get that right. Wow, so I'm already at the end, a little bit early. But for some conclusions for me, I think it's really important to kind of define the goals of the business before we go off tracking data and running off and doing all these things. if that's winding it right back to really basic things, then that's great. You know, that we can do that. I think I love using my ATS as an ATS with the emphasis on the T. I don't expect it to find me anything, but I do expect it to track everything. And it can be your best friend, and it doesn't have to be expensive, but to go to the business and say, yeah, I've tracked all these different things, which is quite nice. It's really important to work with the business. I think not all solutions are driven by us, so we can't take the blame for everything. You know, high turnover, that's not always our fault, or offers not being accepted. But until we have that conversation and have some proof as to why we need help in these situations, we're just going to keep hitting the same old cycle where it's taking too long to hire, we're not filling roles. So for me, that's a really big thing. And also, I think some metrics are a bit misleading, and we have to dig deeper. Going back to the last example, you know, just looking at one set of recruitment costs, when you dig down to the knock-on effects, it can have a real big effect. So that's actually everything from me. I didn't know if anyone had any questions at all. They wanted to ask me. Am I going to be loud? Thank you very much.